And I was like, this is the coolest car in the whole world. And then I thought to myself, I want to be this guy. At 13, I knew I was going to work for my uncle, and I knew that this was going to be my career. And I remember one guy, he looked at me, he goes, like 12 years old. He's like, you can't know anything. And inside my head, I was like, you're right. I know nothing. But you have to fake it until you make it at that point. It took me 6 months to sell my first machine. It was 6 months of grinding and failing and quoting and losing and demonstrations and trying to figure out what I've done wrong and why they bought what they bought. It took me 6 full months to sell that first machine.
Well, welcome to the Engineered Success Podcast, where we sit down with business owners, leaders, people just like you and me that are on their journey of success and really understanding the best path to get there. I'm excited to have Dave in the studio today, and we're going to be unpacking his story and what's gotten him to where he's at. I'm excited for you to follow along as you get through this story, because there's a lot of consistency and just exciting things that Dave's going to share today. So Dave, welcome to the studio.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So first question, as you know,
yes,
and as I prepped you on, we usually like to start way back to the very beginning of time. So tell me a little bit about your childhood and kind of the early days of Dave.
Sure. I grew up outside of Metro Detroit, kind of in between Flint, Ann Arbor, and Detroit. Small town called Highland, Michigan. Not a lot going on. My dad was involved in the automotive industry, kind of drove to and from Detroit every day. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. We've got a lot of business startups in my family. It was a really good childhood. We had lots of lakes around us, lots of places to build dirt tracks for our BMX bikes. Like, it was one of those idyllic childhoods that you hear people talk about. So I grew up in a family of 4. I have an older brother, a younger sister, and they're all still in the area. Pretty tight-knit family still to this point. So that's it. I graduated from high school in 1997, came out to Grand Valley for my college career. I have a degree in management, and I fell in love with the area. I still live here. I have no plans to go anywhere. And we live in Holland, and it's another great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family, and that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, you moved your way over to Holland, and you're here to stay. It sounds like. I'm going to back up to Highland a little bit. And you mentioned that your dad was in the automotive industry, and then you mentioned some entrepreneurs, businesses in the family. Can you tell me a little bit about, more of his career and what he was doing at that time as you were growing up?
Yeah, sure. So my grandfather came from Sweden, immigrated here to the United States. He started a tool and die shop in Metro Detroit, a town called Wixom. I remember being there as a kid and watching all of these machines, cutting metal and stamping out parts and just doing really cool things. My uncle and my father on my dad's side worked for the family business. Ultimately, it closed in maybe the late 80s, right as kind of industrialization, the first wave of automation was coming. Everything at their shop was manual. There were men that made the machines move, that cut the parts, that did the work. As my grandpa was looking toward retirement, and my dad and my uncle were trying to decide whether or not they were going to invest in this company and modernize it, ultimately they decided not to. So that shop closed. I was probably 10 or 12 at that point. I don't remember it impacting me much at the time. I remember we got an Apple IIe computer from it that my dad brought home. That was the engineering computer of the day. And then my father got into automotive plastics and spent his life working through plastic injection molders.
So 10 years old, your father's going through these conversations of like, hey, do we keep the business going, modernize it, or do we shut it down? And I know you mentioned didn't impact you too much. And, some of it's kind of thinking back a little bit, but I think about, my family, my son is 8 years old now. And like, we're at the dinner table having conversations. My wife's in the business too. Yeah. We have a lot of conversations about work, right? And a lot of them are very positive, exciting things, but there's also those things that come up that's like, okay, this is a challenge that we're working our way through and things like that. And lately my son's been jumping into the conversation, right? And great, insights or input or just questions, right? That's like, oh, that's a good question. So I'm assuming that potentially you were involved or you overheard some of those conversations around the home as well. Was that something that was talked about at home, or it was kind of a good separation of no?
My parents were really good at having conversations when the kids weren't around. It's something I don't excel at in my personal life at this point, but I remember them having some conversation around it. My grandpa's shop was about 35 people at its height. I have no idea what the revenue was in 1980, but I remember my dad saying it was going to take multiple millions of dollars to bring this machine or the shop into a current state. And I remember him saying very clearly, I don't have the risk tolerance for that. I mean, that's certainly something that has shaped the way that I view the world, and it certainly shaped the way my dad viewed the world. So we've had those conversations through the years for sure.
Yeah. And I can respect the way that they were able to kind of separate some of that and able to kind of keep that, after the kids go to bed type things. That's when things ratchet up a little bit, but it is difficult. And it is something that as you get into it, it's like, okay, I need to pause in this conversation for later. Right. So thanks for sharing that story. And you mentioned that was about 10 years old. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about the things that you were into, in high school, in middle school. Were you into sports or, kind of starting businesses or doing anything back then? Tell me a little bit about that.
I was an avid soccer player.
Okay.
I loved soccer. I played on travel teams, club teams with my high school. And then I also had to have a job. As my dad changed careers, my mom was a stay-at-home wife, and she took great care of the house and of us. But I can remember being 14, and I wanted to have a new set of skis and a new set of boots. And my parents said, we can't.
Yeah.
And so I got a job, and I worked at an old folks home. And I served food in the dining room to people so I could buy my set of skis, boots, and the season's pass to the local ski hill. So, I had a job very early on, and I figured out how to make that work with sports too.
At 14, how did you remember, or how did you find that job? You remember that? Like how you found that? Was it something where you just went and knocked on the door? Or was it something that was a friend or something? You remember any of that?
I wish I could tell you.
Yeah.
I wish I could tell you. I'm guessing it was something to do with networking through my parents, if I had to say, because it's not something that I remember specifically going out and finding.
Yeah. At 14, it's like, I want to serve food,
I wanted a job.
Yeah.
And
fair.
Whether or not I wanted to serve food, I think I certainly didn't, but I wanted that job. I wanted the means to get what I wanted from it.
And you were able to earn enough money to be able to get those skis in the pass.
That's the whole entirety of the money that I earned went toward that. I saved nothing. I did nothing with it but buy exactly what I wanted.
And was it worth it?
Absolutely. It was actually a really cool experience.
In what ways?
One of our responsibilities was to go down to the patients' rooms, the residents' rooms, and bring them to the dining hall. And I can just remember a couple of people who just wanted to talk and wanted to share knowledge. And again, those are things that don't necessarily sink in when you're 14, but they set foundations for things later and how to listen and learn from other people. So it was a great experience.
Were a lot of those, maybe you don't remember some of these stories, but were they positive stories? Were they things of regret or anything like that, or nothing specific?
I mean, I would say mostly positive.
Yeah.
People at that age, when they're in the nursing home and they're looking at the end of their lives, they want to share their experiences.
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of them were doing.
It's so wild how, as we get older and, as people get older, it turns into maybe a little bit more of like, a reflection and an honest period of life where it's like, okay, these are things that I need to talk out, or things that, are great to instill in the younger generation, and Absolutely. Things that I maybe should have done earlier, but now's my chance kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Now got that first job, you're skiing, you're ski bum now, taking the rest of your high school career off. What's next?
So after that, I played soccer through high school. Mm-hmm. But then it was a big high school. We had 1,600 kids in our school, and there was a school store. And one of the classes that we could take was actually how to manage and run the school store. And I did that for 2 straight years. We ordered all the inventory. We decided what to buy, how to sell it, at what prices to sell it.
Love it.
And I loved it. I just loved it. It was so much fun. Whether or not it made money, I couldn't tell you. I don't remember that. But I remember doing really silly things as a high schooler. In 1996-ish, they had these silly caramel apple suckers. I don't even know if they still sell them. We bought them by the truckload, and we sold them for $0.25. And our teacher was like, these things are never going to sell. And we sold hundreds of them a day for $0.25. And those types of things, again, they stick with you going forward. But it wasn't a groundbreaking decision. It was just fun to do.
And then for that class, you probably learned things early on, like P&L, right? Like, here's how much things cost and here's what a margin is.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you're setting those prices, you have to think about can we afford to buy this? What price are we going to sell it at? What profit are we going to make? Yeah, it was a foundational thing.
Were you writing comp structures at that time in life?
No.
not quite yet?
No.
That comes later, huh?
It does.
So as you're working your way through high school, you're selling suckers, you're playing soccer,
Yep.
living the dream, skiing. As you looked towards college, when we already got a little insight as to where you go to college and kind of the degree, but what things were going through your mind as like what excited you? Were you asking people, hey, what should I get into? Were you taking some of those personality tests or anything in high school? What kind of got you into that degree at Grand Valley?
No, I was not that thoughtful. Plain and simple. I can remember, so I worked for a family business. It's still a family business. But when I ultimately came to Grand Valley, I started working for my uncle who owned a business here. I can remember being 13. We were on the way to Christmas Eve church service, and we were in his brand new Jeep Grand Cherokee. And I thought to myself, this is the coolest car in the whole world. My mom drove a brown minivan. Mm-hmm. And I was like, this is the coolest car in the whole world. And then I thought to myself, I want to be this guy. This is, at 13, I knew I was going to work for my uncle, and I knew that this was going to be my career. So when I came to Grand Valley, it was a very simple decision for me. A business degree in management or professional sales was where I headed.
When you made that kind of statement of like, I want to be this guy, at that point in life at 13, were you seeing more of the physical aspects of things with the car? You mentioned the car. Or were, there are other things about him that you're like, okay, the way that he's communicating, the way that, there's other things on your mind other than the car?
No, it was at that moment.
Yeah.
At that moment, I think it was purely monetary.
Yeah.
But my uncle and I have had a great relationship my entire life. He's very charismatic. He's super funny. He relates well to all different kinds of people. He's able to have a conversation with just about anybody. And I think he and I shared some of those personality traits and some of those things that, I wanted to be. I just decided to model a little bit after him. So no, it was a decision to physically try and be this guy.
Yeah. And as you got into college, you set that goal. I need this new Grand Cherokee and maybe the next year one and get into school. Now, when you got into college at Grand Valley, well, first tell me why Grand Valley.
Yeah. So my parents had 4 kids, and one of their goals was to be able to pay for our college education. And they did. But what they said was, you can go anywhere you want as long as it's an in-state public institution. So I only had 17 choices. Some of them I was not going to get into. My older brother was at U of M. I knew that was not for me. So I chose Grand Valley because it was far enough away from home that I felt like I was going to get a different experience. And it was actually the only college I applied to was Grand Valley.
And as you got started at Grand Valley freshman year, everything you expected?
And more. Yeah, I was, I grew up in a rural part of Metro Detroit, but we had a lot going on. And when I came to Allendale in 1998, it was a pretty quiet town. I think there was McDonald's. There was a coffee shop, but there was no Starbucks. There was nothing like that. It was a very quiet place. But campus was beautiful, and the classes were challenging. I met all kinds of new and different people. And then by the time I was a senior, the new campus in Grand Rapids was built. So I actually moved to downtown Grand Rapids and spent my last year living in Grand Rapids, which was a much different experience than I'd had before.
So then freshman, sophomore year, you lived on campus?
Freshman year, I lived on campus. Okay. Sophomore and junior year, I lived off campus.
Okay. And then as you were kind of finding those people that you were able to get to know and build your friend groups and stuff early on in college, were you finding that was easy to do at Grand Valley, more difficult? You had to be intentional, or just kind of happened?
No, it just kind of happened. It was not difficult to meet people at all. And I mean, I think I'm watching this with my son, who's a freshman at U of M right now. The people in your dorm, the people on your floor are the people that ultimately you build those relationships with. So the first couple of weeks of college are critical toward who you're going to meet and what that's going to look like.
I've experienced that too.
Yeah,
definitely at Grand Valley as well. And those scenarios I just considered it a blessing that when I walked through the door and started talking to people, those first handful of people that I talked to were good people.
Right.
And, I think that says a lot about the school and a lot of things about the way that the system's set up. But, you don't get that everywhere. So sometimes you do have to be a little bit more intentional about walking and being like, okay, we're going to talk to a few people before we, before we actually pick this group. So I know that can really encourage or discourage people, those first years of college of like, what's next? But I also believe that that's a big networking opportunity, a great opportunity to build friends going forward. And so tell me a little bit about the things that you were learning at that phase in college and some of the things that maybe you took with you beyond that you appreciated, or was it mostly kind of the networking side and the ability to talk to people? And
yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So I'm a pretty social person. I really like to be busy and I like to be doing things. So my first couple of weeks at college were just meeting people and going out and doing things. We had simple things like, I don't know if they still do it, but the first week of college, they have a concert. You bring a canned good, you get in for free. Like there was just all kinds of fun and new things to do and meeting new people. Classes I took, I have a degree in business management. I kind of happened into that by accident too. I knew I wanted to be in business. And in my junior year, I walked into a tax accounting class and the book was 5 inches thick. It was ridiculous. And I opened that book during that first class and I looked at it and I said, I don't want to take this class. And I changed my major that day to business management. So that's why I have a management degree. But I use it all the time. I use it every single day. So I think the skills that I learned in school have ultimately been very important to what I do today.
Now, were you working in college as well, or kind of focused on school since, you had the opportunity to have some of that covered?
Yeah. So I told you I got a job pretty early on. I had a job all through high school and I saved at that time a ton of money. I bought myself a computer and I came to college and I lived in the dorm. And I came home at Christmas break and I said to my parents, I spent every penny that I had. And they looked at me and they said, guess you better work harder. Because I spent everything. I had nothing left. So ultimately, I had to get a job. I worked at Radio Shack, of all places, in Standale. It's gone now. I don't know what it is any longer. But I worked at Radio Shack for the second semester of my freshman year. And then my uncle, who I worked for my entire life, called me and he said, hey, I need you to come to work for me. And he said, it's a part-time deal. You can work around your classes. You can, it'll be a job that is flexible, but I need you to come to work for me. And I mean, obviously that was the opportunity that I've been waiting for. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I started working for him.
Why do you think he called you?
I've never asked him that question. I talked to him on the way here this morning.
Yeah.
And I've never asked him that question.
Yeah.
And I will do that when I leave today. I don't know why he called me. I think, we had a great relationship. We spent a lot of time together as a kid, but I don't know.
Yeah.
And I will figure that out.
Yeah, I'm curious because, obviously, someone that you admired, throughout life, and you're kind of looking at as a role model in some scenarios. But then also, he, in reverse, saw something in you as far as an opportunity to, come through and say, like, hey, Dave's got it. He can really go somewhere potentially.
I'm honestly surprised we've never had that conversation, and I will. Yeah. I look forward to that, and I will report back.
Awesome. Love it. Now, as you're kind of getting into college, you're trying to, again, earn some money because you spent all your money. Now you're kind of back to, you got to get that ski pass. Yeah. How are you going to do it? So you're getting into working with your uncle and kind of making things happen. What was that role that he had? He said, I need you to work for me. What did he have you doing?
It's a great question. So the company that now I own, that I bought from him, is called Midwest Metrology. And we sell industrial measuring machines, coordinate measuring machines, optical machines, 3D scanners, stuff for quality involved in manufacturing. And at the time, he had this small manual machine, which I don't think people make anymore, but it was hand-driven coordinate measuring machine. And they sold for $15,000. There was very little money in these things. And he was pretty clear. He didn't want to do it. It was something he needed somebody like myself to do, kind of somebody who wanted to learn the ropes, who wasn't going to cost him a ton of money, and who could see if ultimately this was going to turn into something. So it was a small manual coordinate measure machine that we sold throughout Western Michigan.
And then what were the ways that you learned how to sell that? Like, is this something that was just natural for you? That's like, this is easy. I'll just knock on some doors and drop them off and collect the check.
No, it was not easy. Yeah. We had to, so part of selling this machine was walking people through the software and showing them how to use this system. But I had never touched one before. We had, this was early on in the this wasn't even year 2000 yet. Computers were not what they were today. You couldn't just take a laptop to somebody's site and pop up your computer and be like, look, this is how it works. We had this.
Or do it on Teams or Zoom.
Or do it on Teams or Zoom, right? Which we spend a lot of time doing now, but then it wasn't a thing. You had to drive to people's locations and you had to show them the system. So we had an offline box. It was maybe 3 feet long, 2 feet wide, and it held the computer control box for this machine. And it simulated how it would work. So he sat me down with it and he said, here, learn this. And then he walked away. And it was weeks of me struggling, trying to figure out how to work this, how to make it do what ultimately people wanted it to do. It was feet to the fire, trial by error. Because he made it clear he didn't have time to do that. He was focusing on other things. So the first few months were really hard and it was really bad. And there was a lot of failure and there was a lot of, pushing through. And I was a 19-year-old kid talking to people who had years and years of experience in manufacturing. And I remember one guy, he looked at me, he goes, like 12 years old. He's like, you can't know anything. And inside my head, I was like, you're right. I know nothing, but you have to fake it until you make it at that point. So it was trial by error.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Well, I'm impressed to hear that in your head, you were saying, you're right, I don't know anything, because there's some scenarios where it's kind of like at 19, 20, you think you know a lot more than you actually do because you haven't had those chances to know what you don't know or learn what you don't know yet. But I know that in those situations where people are saying those things to you and you're feeling that self-doubt and that, confidence go through the floor, how did you still get into those conversations and then build trust and rapport?
I think part of that is being a stupid 19-year-old. Right? Like I did know that I didn't know, but I also knew that I could learn it. There's false confidence in many 19-year-old young men. I have one of them. I see it. It was a continual process of trying to learn and trying to get better and talking to the other people in our organization who were finding success. Ultimately, something did turn inside my brain, which allowed me to figure this out and work through it and then start refining the process of talking to people about it. I don't know when that happened or how.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking out loud in this next comment here, but thinking a lot about blind optimism and being, 19, 20 and thinking that you can figure it out, you can do it. But yet there's still people in your life, and I've had people in my life too, that they observe and they see, they're like, wow, that's going to be basically impossible to do what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
But they don't. I mean, I haven't had the scenario in my life, and maybe you did, but like where they're like, don't do that because you're going to fail. It's not going to happen. It was kind of more or less like encouraging of give it a try. If you can do the best you can. But like, why if we have this blind optimism and that's what it takes to start something, why do you think people aren't jumping in and trying to be like, don't do that. You don't see how hard that's going to be. That's going to be difficult.
I mean, there are naysayers in the world. There are people that will tell you not to do something. That you'll hear that all the time. In fact, I've heard that from time to time in my life. But part of having a goal and setting a goal is understanding that you might not reach that goal, that you have to have steps to get you there. And whether or not I had concrete written steps that were going to take me to this end goal or not, I knew that if I continued to work on this and talk to people who were successful with it, that ultimately I could do that. And so, I mean, it was a relentless pursuit of trying to figure this thing out in my spare time until I did.
You mentioned the first few months were difficult. How long did it take for it to kind of click and turn?
I would love to tell you it was 2 or 3 months, but I bet you it was 6 to 9.
Okay.
I bet you there was a lot of failure there. As a 19-year-old kid who I was a college student, I had other responsibilities other than just trying to figure out how to sell this to people. I'm sure there was a lot of failure there. I'm not sure I understood you were supposed to call people back and say, hey, why didn't you buy this from me? Or what did you buy? I'm not sure at that point in my life I was seeking out that type of feedback. I think that came later on. So I'm sure there were plenty of lost opportunities there that I'll never even know about.
Yeah. But you took the time and you were given the space to be able to figure it out and try and fail.
Yes.
And I think
try to fail. Yeah.
Yep. And that's okay. Right.
I tried really hard to fail.
Yeah. And so you're learning that process, you're starting that new position, you're finishing up school.
Yep.
Was this a 4-year thing for you or 5 like me?
I finished in 4, but there was a lot of summer classes.
Yeah,
there
fair.
was a lot of summer classes. I went home after my freshman year for summer, but then I did not go back after that. So there was a lot of working in the summer, taking classes in the summer, trying to make sure that I was actually going to finish this thing.
And then after you got your degree, you kept that same position and jumped in full time.
I'll make a really long story short. You can delve into it more if you desire, but right as I was getting ready to graduate, my uncle called me and he said, I don't think I'm going to have a position for you. I don't think there's something that I can do to keep you busy. And I panicked. And I took the first job that I applied for and got, which was selling life insurance for a local company. And I went for these interviews and was told I had the job. And they said, here's all the books that you need to learn how to sell all of the stuff that you don't want to sell.
Yeah.
And I looked at those books and I went to one of the networking events they had for new people in this organization. And I knew I was going to be miserable. I just knew it. But I didn't feel like I had any choice. So I started down this path of becoming a licensed broker for life insurance. Right before that job was supposed to start, my uncle called and he said, hey, I've got an opportunity. Do you want it? And I said, yep. So the only real job that I never took was that job I quit before I started, which was uncomfortable and horrible. It was a good learning experience for how to communicate with people, but ultimately it was a bad experience. I think probably for me and definitely for the company that tried to hire me.
And how long of a period was that?
2.5 months, maybe.
Okay. So it's
quite some
quick.
time.
So it's just enough time for your uncle to realize, oh no, I can't let him go.
So I think an opportunity came his way for me to have a full-time career. And so I took it. And I mean, really the rest is kind of history. There's a lot involved there, but yeah, I've worked for him my entire life.
So tell me a little bit about the business at that stage.
There were 2 of us. It was him and myself. We both worked from home. There was no office space. There was no showroom. There was nothing. It was 2 guys selling essentially coordinate measure machines to people in Western and Central Michigan. I worked, Northern Indiana. I worked in Northern Indiana. He worked Western Michigan. Our paths would cross when I needed him. We would travel together quite a bit. We would go to trade shows together, but ultimately we were 2 people working our own territories, trying to both be successful on our own.
And then there were lines that you're distributing, or was it?
There was a single line that we were distributing. Yep.
Okay.
It was coordinate measuring machines and, they had vision systems, they had articulated arms, but it was all quality control equipment.
And in conversations with your uncle, kind of looking at the business at that stage, was he talking about, the future of what this business could look like if we're able to hit these certain goals and certain steps, or was it kind of like day to day, hey, we gotta figure it out today?
So he was highly successful. He was highly motivated. And he had a territory that he had cultivated for years on his own. He put me through a lot of training. We did a lot of like sales classes, the Dale Carnegie stuff and stuff like that. We did a lot of internal training with the larger organization that we represented, but really it wasn't quite 2 ships passing in the night, but it was 2 people who were working independently that came together from time to time as needed. So it was a little bit of both. It was a little sink or swim. That was clearly his attitude when I started. And I don't mean that to sound negative. It wasn't negative. He would help me when I needed it, but he was allowing me the opportunity to grow into my own as well.
Perfect. And then as you are, we've talked about family and things about your family, but at what phase are you with building out your family today?
Where am I today?
Where were you at that stage?
So I met my wife when I was a sophomore at Grand Valley. She was going into her freshman year at U of M. So we never went to school together. We never lived in the same town together. When I graduated, I moved to Lansing, which was easy for me to get to my job in Indiana and also easy for me to get to Ann Arbor. But we lived separate lives essentially through college, and we got married right after college. I was 21. She was 20. We were young. And I think we're coming up on 24 years this year.
Yeah, awesome. Congrats. Yeah. And I know that at that size of business, you're getting involved with your uncle. There's a little bit of uncertainty, sink or swim, but also new marriage kind of thing, right? No kids. So you had maybe the opportunity to be a little bit more, take on a little bit more risk.
So, one of the things that my dad used to say to me is, I need to count on a paycheck every other week. He thought that working for a big company, and he worked for many like large corporations, he used to say, I have to have that paycheck every other week. And when that paycheck stops coming, I stop working. I've been a commission salesperson my entire life. So one of the things my uncle said to me when he hired me on for the full-time job is learn how to budget and learn how to save, because there was no guarantee. I've gone 9 months without a paycheck once, and that was really hard, but there was no guarantee. And honestly, I don't think there is a guarantee. And that's kind of how I view the risks that I've been able to take throughout my career. My dad thought what he had was certainty until that company closes the plant or work dries up and they lay everybody off or whatever the case may be. So I've always viewed that certainty, I think, a little differently than what my dad did.
Now, you mentioned early on, I think you said 13, you were had this idea of a life of, the thing, right? The car.
Yeah.
And now you're out of college, you're married, you're starting those, first sales calls, and you're getting told no, yes a lot. Is the paycheck starting to come in yet?
No. It was a rough learning period. So it took me 6 months to sell my first machine. It was 6 months of grinding and failing and quoting and losing and demonstrations and trying to figure out what I've done wrong and why they bought what they bought. It took me 6 full months to sell that first machine. And, one of the questions that you asked was, what is success going to look like? And we'll talk about that, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. Success at that point was the first sale. That's what success was. Mm-hmm. And that's what gave me the ability to go look for the next one and work harder toward that next one. So it was not immediately successful at all.
And going through that, I mean, that's a long time, right? Mm-hmm. And you have that goal out there, but you still kept with it, kept that grind. You mentioned the 9 months that you went without a pay. Like, how do you get through those valleys, we'll call them, like those periods where you feel like you're in the desert of like, hey, I'm not able to make a sale. Like, how do you keep knocking on that next door? How do you keep that motivation out? Are there certain tactics or things that you do daily, or things that you put out in front of yourself to be able to keep knocking on that next door?
Well, now we have metrics that we watch. We look at, how many calls did you make? How many demos did you do? What kind of customers have you created? We look at all kinds of different things now to say, are we seeing upward trajectory? We did not do that when I started in this job. So how do you keep going is you have to look for the incremental steps that lead you toward that goal. And I talk to my employees about that still today. It's not, you don't go from 0 to success in 10 days. It does not work that way. There's a large foundation of knowledge that comes from losing, from learning, from trying. And that's what that was. It was building that foundation that ultimately you have to have in order to be successful. And that takes time.
Mm. Is that something that your uncle taught you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So you like, obviously in that scenario, someone has to be mentoring you or telling you those types of things and giving you that space and giving you the opportunity to learn and fail, which it sounds like he's done multiple different times throughout your career and throughout your life, which then built that foundation that you're talking about.
I think without somebody telling you this is what you're doing and why, without giving you the why, you will fail. Without somebody telling you, I've been in that place, I know what you're feeling, and here's how we're going to get through this, you will fail. Not everyone, but it's really, really difficult. And so part of how I view my job today as the owner of this company is mentoring these employees, especially the younger ones, at what it takes to be successful. And that is not just showing up and turning on your laptop. It doesn't work that way. No matter what job it is, I think.
Now, what if you are at that stage, you're just out of college or you're in college and you are at a place or in a position that you don't have that person yet, giving you that kind of advice and pouring into you? Do you have any recommendations on places to go or, things to look up or ways to reach out to people to find that?
So I've never had to do that because I had it internally already. But I know there are organizations out there. I know there are people out there that want to mentor young people, that want to help people become successful. I would say volunteering is a great way to find those people, because you will find like-minded people. I would say give your time to something that you believe in, no matter what that is. It doesn't matter. Find something to expand your horizons, and it doesn't have to be work related, because you might not find it at work. You may find it somewhere else. Here in West Michigan, it might be at your church. Maybe there's an older adult that is successful at what they're doing, and maybe that's the person that you ultimately find. I think, if you do find that person that you're interested in, though, you have to communicate that to them. You have to say to them, I'm really interested in your story. I'm really interested in how you got to where you are. Is that something you're willing to share? That the person, if you're looking for that, you have to tell that person that you're looking for something, or they will never know. It doesn't happen by magic.
And that's a skill you learned early on, Dave, when you were 14 and you were getting that ski money. You were asking the right questions and hearing the stories and getting the feedback from people that wanted to share it. And you learned that skill early on.
And I'm still trying to be a ski bum too. So
there's always next year. There are scenarios where, people feel nervous about that, right? They feel nervous about talking to, someone they look up to or someone they admire from afar. And, like you mentioned, even back then it was maybe even more difficult, because you actually had to have, it's so easy right now. If you see someone, just reach out, send an email, give a phone call, connect in, a networking group or something like what you're describing at church or whatever. And, just be willing to jump out and ask, and then be willing to take that feedback and show that you're coachable. And then you'll notice that door will remain open, and they're open to you coming back.
Yep. My middle son is really involved in high school robotics, and he is part of the fundraising team. And there's 4 kids on the fundraising team, and 3 of them are terrified to make a phone call. It's really hard to ask people for money without getting them on the phone, without putting yourself out there to say, this is something I need help with. And you don't have to, it's not just about money, right? But you have to be willing to say, I need some help here. And we had, in my building last month, Hamilton Robotics showed up, and they did a demonstration of their robot, and they asked for money. And one of the kids came up to me after, a 16-year-old kid, and he goes, do you hire interns? And I gave him my card, and I said, give me a call.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's all it took. Do you hire interns? Would I hire that kid? Probably.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd at least give him something to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Being okay to ask. I mean, that even goes, throughout your career. There's people that struggle with that in their 30s and 40s. So the being willing to ask, and it's just being okay with the learning and being okay with being told no.
Right.
We were talking about this earlier. You're not told yes 100% of the time. No, it's actually the reverse.
It is.
You're told no more than you're told yes.
Right. Well, I also coach high school baseball, and we tell the kids all the time, what's a 300 batting average? It's a Hall of Fame hitter. 300 batting average means you're successful 30% of the time you're at the plate. 70% of the time you are unsuccessful. But if you can hit 300, you will be a Hall of Fame baseball player. That's crazy.
What got you into being a coach of baseball?
I actually know very little about baseball.
I would have expected soccer, but you said baseball.
I coach soccer too.
Okay.
I know very little about baseball, but my oldest, when he was about 11 years old, decided to try playing travel baseball. He ultimately did not make the team. And he emailed the coach after, and he said, hey, coach, I'm really interested in playing for the team. What can I do to improve? And the coach said, come on out back for another tryout. And he came out, and whether he was good enough or not, the coach gave him a spot on the team. And from there, I kind of got roped into it, to be honest with you. In kids sports, there's not enough coaches, just like there's not enough referees. And so this coach said, hey, can you help? And I said, sure, but I don't know anything about baseball. And so this was when he was maybe 11. He's 19 now. So it's been 8 years I've been coaching baseball, and I still know almost nothing. I kind of view myself at baseball as the guy who is there to make sure the kids are doing what they're told, that they're paying attention, that they're working. And as I've soaked things up through the years, I can help them a little bit here and there, but I'm not a baseball guru. I just don't know enough to do it. But I love being with the kids. So baseball coaching it is.
I've heard a lot of stories on this podcast and just throughout life about the connection between sports and then just business and life in general. And if you get someone like yourself that maybe, understands the concept of baseball, but maybe, isn't quite like a professional baseball player, but yet at the same point understands business and can help the kids kind of connect the dots. I think just like those are some of the best coaches, if you're not going to play professional sports, but you're still going to go out and do life. Those are really good skills to connect.
Well, and my kids go to a really small school, and we don't put out professional athletes. We barely put out a college athlete. Athletes at this school they're learning a life skill. And that's really how I tend to view it. And talking about failure and talking about working hard and putting in the effort, all of that stuff is what life is actually about, right? So sports is, I think, a really good avenue to talk about life. And I guess that's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah, love it. And we're going to back up just a little bit. You're just out of college. Yep. There's two of you working at the organization, newly married. Tell me about kind of the next stages of business, because I know a little bit of where you are today, but we've got a gap there.
There was a lot of adventure at that point in time. My wife was trying to get into medical school. So she took a gap year in between college and getting into medical school. She was working as a substitute teacher. And I had time coming out of my ears. Like I had time to work and do what I needed to do because there was nobody that needed to be fed or be cared for or have diapers changed or any of that stuff. So we lived in Kalamazoo at the time, and I was driving to Indiana for work almost every single day. That's where my customers were. And she was doing her thing, trying to get into medical school. So we had a dog and we had an apartment, and it was just simply trying to learn how to be adults. And I guess that's the best way that I could put it, is we were trying to learn how to be adults. Part of that was work.
And as the business progressed, everything sunshine and roses throughout that whole process? Or can you think back to some times when it's like, okay, this was pretty difficult?
Oh no, there were definitely times that were difficult, but it was fun too. It was a lot of fun trying to figure this out. I can remember I was working in Indiana, and I can remember calling on a customer, and I walked into their facility, and he said, "I am so angry at your organization. I'm ready to kick you out." I was 22 years old. I had no money. We were just working, trying to figure this out. And I said to him, "Give me a chance. If you allow me to be your sole point of contact, I will solve your problems. We will make this work, and you will ultimately be happy." And I knew what I was signing up for was going to be unpleasant. Every time a machine goes down, every time something's broken, I was like, "You call me, I will help you." And that guy turned into my best customer. For the rest of my life, he was my best customer. But it was work. It took effort. And I knew that it was going to take work and effort. So that was exactly what I expected. But it was definitely challenging at first. Turned out to be great. But that's the lesson you learn.
Extreme ownership.
Right.
Yeah. Being willing to jump in and tackle that.
Yep.
And the organization obviously has gone through a lot of change and phases since day one to where you are today. Let's work through a little bit of that. Tell me a little bit.
So we were two people, just my uncle and I, for the first 10, maybe 12 years of my career.
Okay.
He ultimately hired a third person, and she's still with me today. She's actually my cousin, so family business for sure. But for the first 10, 12 years, it was just he and I doing our thing, growing this company together. After that, we were three people until I bought the company from him. January 1st of 2018 is when I took over Midwest Metrology. He still lives 2 miles from me. We talk all the time. He's still a great mentor of mine. In 2018, then I took over. We went down to 2 people because he retired. And I bought a building, tried to fill it with machinery, and up until last year, we were 7 people total from there. So there was growth in the company. Our territories have grown. Our responsibilities have grown. But ultimately, it was still a pretty small company.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of that process of purchasing the business, and curious to understand a little bit more about the conversations between you and your wife and like how you made that call of like, okay, this is a risk that we're going to jump in and, take the purchase. Obviously you're familiar with the business and it wasn't anything new, like a new business for you. But then that next stage of also, you mentioned putting equipment in a building that you guys hadn't had before. So there's an investment in things there too.
I have never had and will never have a bigger supporter than my wife. Anytime I have come to her with a concern or the ability to grow, she has said, this is something you have to do. She's smarter than I am by a whole ton. And because she is not in business, she looks at things differently. But she's got a very critical mind and she's able to really help me make decisions. And I value that greatly. So in 2018, we actually rented a building, 6,000 square foot warehouse. It was a machine shop from the 1980s. It was super grimy, greasy, oily. You've probably been in them. We all have. We spent a lot of time, a lot of elbow grease, cleaning and painting and scraping and putting in floors ourselves and just doing everything we could on our own to make this place a place where we could bring not only employees, but customers. And a couple of years later, I was given the opportunity to buy this building. The landlord at the time he was an 82-year-old guy. His name was Gord, and fantastic man. And I called him and I said, Gord, I'm going to extend my lease by a year. And he said, hey, Dave, just so you know, I've got an offer on your building and I want to give you the right of first refusal. And I said, okay, give me an hour. I'll call you back. And I called my wife and I was like, this is the situation. And she goes, buy the building. And I said, just like that? She goes, just like that. And it was scary. To me, that was terrifying. Like this was a step further than anything I'd done before. Ultimately, we bought that building and it was a huge blessing for this company. Not only did we have our own space that we were able to do what we wanted to, but when I sold it for a humongous profit. So every time I've had an opportunity to expand this company, she has always said, do it, do it, do it. And it's really great to have somebody that has your back that strongly.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can relate to a little bit of what you're describing, your personal life too with my wife. She does an amazing job of, analyzing and having good conversations, good questions, and always supportive at the end of the day and moving things forward, and definitely wouldn't be anywhere where I am today without her. So that is a big across multiple journeys that I've had the opportunity to talk to different people. It's a big aspect of it, right? That support network.
And it's not that it doesn't come without the challenge too. She is more than willing to challenge me and say, are you thinking about this properly? Are you analyzing this situation right? It does not come without that. She's a strong personality. It does not come without that challenge either, which forces me to think about things in a different way sometimes too.
You mentioned that right after you purchased the business, obviously we've talked a lot about the space, but you grew the team too.
Yep.
Why did you take it from 2-3 people to 7?
Well, that's a really good question. I think that when I bought the company from my uncle, his goal was to have a job for himself. His job, he wanted something that he was controlling, but was a job for himself. And what I'm trying to build is something that has way more than that. Whether I sell it when I retire, whether one of my kids takes it over, I don't know yet, but I'm trying to build something that has real and lasting value. And that comes with having more employees. It comes with having more responsibility. It comes with having a bigger building. But I'm trying to build something where, it has a little bit more value at the end.
Yeah. It's been mentioned to me before, not saying this is your scenario, but that you're really looking at it and saying, hey, I want to own a business, not own a job. Correct. Right. And there's a lot of scenarios where it's like you can be very, very successful in a one-man band, and being a contractor, freelancer, you can be very, very successful.
Absolutely.
But, you're trading time for money, and the minute that you step away, it's fine if you budget accordingly, but long-term, as you go to retire, like you have to just be saving in a different way. So building that business in a way way that then you own the business. And then, the team can all function and work without you there too is kind of a goal to building that side of it as well. So you have that in mind, you're building the team. Now you're managing 7 people versus, just yourself. That takes a different level of understanding and skill as well. And you didn't have too much management experience before you hired these 7 people.
No.
So how did you learn that? Was this school of life and hard knocks, or was this, all right, had someone come in and support and help us build this out and went through training and different things?
Nope. No training, no support. This was trial by error. And the interesting thing is, my team is small enough that we all work together. I don't have HR. I don't have finance. We don't have any of that. We're not a big enough company. So we all do some pieces of this. But I think realistically, what I do is just the golden rule. I treat people the way I want to be treated. Period. End of communication. And from there, we've worked out all kinds of different things, but each of these people need to be treated differently and independently as well. So I don't have any written policies per se, but I know my people well enough because the business is small enough that I understand how each of them wants to be treated. No policies at all, though.
And how do you, and everyone's in that office, or there's some people that work remote?
So, the long story short is I bought a new company in January of last year. I sold my existing building, moved my existing company into the new building. And now there are 12 of us that work in the main building. I have 2 employees in Rochester, New York, and then we have 2 employees that work at an offsite lab. So the majority of the company is in one place, but I also have to manage people far remote, 600, 700 miles away.
And how are you keeping, a team of that size all in line with the vision of where you're looking to keep things going? Is this something where you're following like a process like EOS or something like that, or is it something else?
So the process of integrating 2 companies is something I've never done before. It's completely
It sounds
new.
super easy, I'm sure.
I'll tell you, it's like drinking through a fire hose every single day. But I love the challenge. I love getting up in the morning and trying to figure this out. But I don't have a process. I'm going with what my brain is telling me to do, what my conversations with other people that I trust are telling me to do. And I'm still doing that simple treat people the way that you want to be treated. But there's definitely different cultures between what is Midwest Metrology and the company that I acquired is called Dynamic Metrology. And it was pretty much a 50-50 merger. But the cultures were vastly different, and working through those has been incredibly fun and hard and frustrating, and pick all the adjectives you want. It's been really a challenge.
And you got plenty to think about. At the end of the day, you're coming home for dinner, you're, sitting on the couch, you're doing a workout, whatever you're doing. How do you keep focused on the right things in your life?
Yeah. Great question. So I've done this from day one when I worked at home by myself until now. The first thing I do in the morning is I create a list. I jot it on a notebook that I keep, and I just create a list. And I will not stop until that list is clear. So whether it's, whatever needs to be addressed in that day, I write it down. When it's done, then my day can be done. And it's just that simple. So it's a very, omnipresent thing in my life. It's how I work at home too. I create a list and I work through that list. It's a way of just staying motivated and understanding what needs to be done every single day.
Do you encourage your team to do the same thing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have a lot of tools. Today we have a ton of tools that we didn't have before. We use Salesforce, off the shelf Salesforce, but we use that to manage our customers and to know what needs to be done. But it isn't perfect. And what I find is sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night with a thought that hits me. That goes in the book, right? It's the only way I go back to sleep. Write it down so you remember to take care of it in the morning. So I create this. Sometimes it's a page, sometimes it's 2, sometimes it's 3 bullet points. It just depends what is important that day. And when that's done, I go home. That's it.
Love it. Especially the intentionality as you get into the day to set your priorities. Because if you're not planning your day is going to plan you. It kind of comes no matter what. And it's like, am I going to have a productive day, or am I going to be reactive to whatever is thrown at me? Now, how are you with that? How do you stick to that list? Because you know that at the end of the day, you're not going to go to bed until that list is done, but yet there's always stuff that happens, right?
Yeah. I mean, you have to add to the list.
Okay.
You have to. So there's always going to be distractions. And in anyone's life, there's distractions. Not yesterday, the day before, I got a call from the school and they said, hey, your youngest is sick. He needs to be picked up. Well, I didn't write that on my list. You can't, but it has to be taken care of. And because I have the flexibility in my day to control what I do, I can go pick him up and take him home. Mm-hmm. That took an hour and a half of my day. It's not something I want to give up. I want him to know that I'm willing to come get him and help him. But that pushes everything further down the list. Mm-hmm. I didn't write it down. I should have wrote, go pick up Dylan and take him home. Mm-hmm. But the list is the list. So you just get back to it and work through it. No matter what the distraction is, go back to the list.
We've talked about the, recent merger acquisition. We've talked about where the business started, where it is today. Yeah. I'm curious and excited to learn more about what the future brings and what you're excited about with the business and personally, which is what are you most excited and most passionate about right now?
My favorite day in the whole world is payday. I love writing the paychecks. It's my straight up favorite thing. It shows that everybody's working. It shows that we're all doing the same thing.
I thought you were going to say tax day.
Second favorite.
Okay.
Second favorite.
Now we know you're really being honest.
Yeah. I love writing paychecks. Where is this company going? That's a heck of a question. I employ a lot of salespeople on, the first half of my business. Those guys they're really easy. They're telling me what they need, why they need it, where their next steps are all the time. For instance, we sell a line of microscopy, industrial microscopes. And my sales guy came up to me a few months ago and he said, hey, I want you to look at this new system. It's something we need to be selling. Well, that's pretty easy, right? Then all you have to do is look at whether that makes sense to add on to your company. You add it on, he has a new set of responsibilities and therefore a new way to make money. Super easy. On the service side of the company, it's a lot harder. And I'm only a year in, so I don't want to give the impression that I understand darn near anything yet. Like I said, it's been drinking through a fire hose. It's been trying to figure out how this works. But we are going to start adding new services for our customers, new products that we can use. And realistically, the company that I bought needs to be modernized. Kind of like my grandpa and my dad back in the 80s. This company needs to be modernized. So my focus right now is in how we can bring the older equipment up to a more current standard. And from there, I just don't know yet.
Yeah.
I just don't know yet.
But it's an exciting path that you're on, and obviously seen some good growth and some challenges that you've been able to work through. And now going forward, you're able to pull from those experiences and accelerate when you want to and accelerate where it makes sense, but also, understand that, there's rebuilds of certain things that need to happen, processes and foundations that need to be built for the future. So that's super exciting. I thank you so much for sharing. Thank you so much for sharing your kind of journey to get to what you're doing today and what you're excited about. Now, if you think back, you're 13, you're in that Grand Cherokee and a voice comes in your head, it's future Dave. Yeah. What is one thing that you just wish that you could tell yourself when you're 13 years old?
Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch, right? There's a ton. And as a commission-based salesperson, I think the most important thing you can do is save. And that is something my uncle said to me that I did not understand until much later in life. But you have to, I think every human being needs to understand what you're bringing in, what's going out, and what you're doing with what's coming in. And it's been a focus of our lives for a long, long time. But I think one way to have control over at least your personal side of your life, and I think this filters directly over into the business side of your life, is you have to have a plan for your money. Where is it going? What are you doing with it? And are you directing it to the right places? Because a great way to feel out of control is to not know what's happening with that side of your life. I think on a personal side, that is absolutely something that I would say is a primary tenet to anybody's life. And it doesn't matter what you make. You have to work with what you have. You have to have a budget. You have to know where it's going. On the business side, I mean, I think what nobody told me and what I now realize as a 46-year-old man is You're going to fail. There will be times where it doesn't go your way. Failure doesn't have to be huge. There's lots of little failures that we all experience every single day, but we can't be afraid to talk about those in any aspect of life, really. Mm-hmm. Going back to the baseball where you're a 300 hitter and you're a Hall of Famer, you have to talk about what went wrong and what can I learn from it? How do I grow from it? And I think I wish somebody would have said to me, don't be afraid to fail. It's going to be okay. Mm. And it normally is.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. Definitely resonate a lot with what you're saying and both of those things. And definitely know that someone listening that's younger is going to hopefully latch on to what you said and be able to, learn from it and have that be an impact and a change in their future. Now, I want to get into the last question, which is what is your definition of success? But before I get there, I did notice in what you drove up, the car that you were driving today. Yeah. And now relating it back to your story a little bit, it makes a lot of sense. So what are you driving these days?
It's a 2022 Ford Bronco.
Yeah, Ford Bronco.
Yeah.
Blue.
It's blue.
Gorgeous.
The doors come off in the summertime.
Yeah.
I absolutely love it. And that is actually another story from my childhood. A friend of mine in high school owned a 1968 Ford Bronco. And it was a pile of junk. Every bit of it needed restoration. This is not what you would consider today, $100,000 or $150,000 car. This was a $400 car. But I can remember driving in this vehicle in the winter and pulling people out of ditches and, taking it just everywhere and having so much fun in it. And so when I needed a new car, this was last year, my wife said, get what you want. And I said, do you mean that? And she said, yeah. And so I came home one day and I was like, I found this used Bronco. I want it. And it seats 5 people. We have 5 people in our family. I have 3 boys to sit across that back seat. One is in college now. So she goes, I don't think you can fit all 5 of us in that car. And I said, I don't intend to. I bought this car just because I wanted it, just because it's fun.
Yeah. And it works great on days like today where it's icy and snowy. So perfect.
It's fun in the snow, but it's better to take to the beach.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
No. Thank you for describing that.
Sure.
And, circling back around to that part of the story, I found it very interesting, just as you're getting into
I've never bought a Grand Cherokee though.
Yeah.
Maybe I need to buy a Grand Cherokee.
You've upgraded. Yeah. You're Ford now. All right. So definition of success. You've gone through a lot in your life, right? You've had a lot of challenges. You've had a lot of things that, maybe were put into place when you're younger that now have helped you on your journey and you're really able to leverage those skills and to be successful today. But tell me a little bit about, what your definition of success is today.
Yeah. I thought hard about this and the answer is going to be complicated because I would be lying if I said that I have not been successful. It would be unfair. I'm successful because of a lot of different circumstances, a lot of different people, and also the circumstances that I was born into. I didn't start this company. My uncle did. Have I grown it into something a little bit bigger? Yes. Have I been successful? I think undeniably yes. Do I feel successful every day? Absolutely not. I think success it's a moving target for me. I don't know that I'll ever actually get to where I can say, oh yeah, I'm successful. I have success. I work towards success. I strive for success, but I can't define that for you yet. I don't think I've found it. And I know that's a little strange, but that's honestly how I feel about it.
Well, it's very honest. And I know that as we're on this podcast talking about different people's journey of understanding what success is, also understanding that for everyone, that might mean something different. And it is a journey to understanding today what that looks like for them.
Right.
And over time, you were pretty clear in when you were 13 of what success looked like.
Right.
But now it's changed a little bit.
But it has to, right? Because, and this is just my feelings. This is purely me. But if I were to sit here today at 46 and say, yeah, I found success, well, what's left? Where do I go from here? So if you make it a moving target and it's something that you're constantly moving toward and striving to get to, I think that's where the challenge in life comes from. So am I successful? Yeah, I really feel like I am. Have I reached it? I don't think so.
Perfect, Dave. Well, thank you so much again for being on the Engineer Success Podcast and having this conversation. It's been very insightful and intriguing and just overall encouraging to hear your story.
Oh, thank you.
A lot of times we have individuals in our life that can come in and pour into us and tell stories of times when they went through struggles or they had different experiences that motivated them and encouraged them. And I'm hoping that today someone hears that story from you and is encouraged and motivated. And maybe one theme, that I picked up on throughout multiple, but one that I just want to just double click on a little bit is that story of you've been at the same business for a long time, the same family business for a long time, and have achieved this success from consistency and the grind of doing that for a long period of time. And that has yielded you this result. So encouraging people to stick with it. When it's hard, keep pushing at it. You don't need to bounce to something different just because the grass is greener. It's not always greener.
I don't think the grass is always greener. And I think that we can make the grass green. I mean, you can make your situation better. And that is going to take hard work. It's going to take dedication. But if you want to excel at your craft, whatever that is, that will take effort and it will take work. But if you believe in what you're doing, then it will be a little bit easier. So just go work at it. Just go do it. Make it happen.
Sounds like a great way to end the episode, right?
Yeah.
Go work at it and make it happen.
Make it happen.
Thank you so much, Dave.
It was my pleasure.